So you mentioned skepticism and conspiracy theory. My dad studied maths and statistics at university, and he wanted me to ask you, I'm also curious, how do we distinguish between someone that's trained to doubt something and to seek for evidence in order to come towards the truth versus conspiratorial doubt?
Mm,
So
yeah.
where's the line between someone creating conspiracy theories versus someone that's genuinely being a skeptic and trying to find truth?
Yeah, good. So there's a nice distinction in the literature between um, theorizing about a conspiracy on the one hand, and then conspiracy theorizing on the other. And what that distinction really amounts to is that exactly what you just said there. There are some people um, who pursue inquiries because they suspect that there is something shady afoot, and they want to bring that to light. And then there are other people who seem to be doing something similar, um, but we are far more reluctant to kind of admire their behavior. We're far more willing to condemn them and to criticize them. And it's a fine line to tread in some cases, but here's one way of delineating the two. So think of something like, um, think of a conspiracy that happened, like Watergate scandal in the 1970s. So those who were working, the journalists, those who uncovered the Watergate scandal, that was an instance of a conspiracy where the evidence pointed towards it and was being suppressed. So it's an instance of theorizing about conspiracy. So the journalists who were kind of working on this, they were guided by the evidence. They were guided by the truth and other um, epistemic considerations, so things like knowledge and understanding. And that meant that wherever these things took them, they would follow.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine if the truth, the evidence actually didn't point towards Nixon, or it pointed towards a different conclusion, they would have drawn the conclusion that would have um, you know been identical to the evidence
Mm-hmm.
based on the evidence. Conspiracy theorists, by contrast, aren't necessarily guided by the truth and by evidence. Um, Rather, there are probably other factors at play. Probably there might be practical factors, so a sense of belonging in one's in-group, a kind of fear of being excluded or being an outcast. And there are differences in how they process and just handle things like evidence. So take an example such as QAnon and think of an echo chamber. So an online echo chamber would be somewhere that the members kind of actively distrust those outside of it, and certain views are reinforced. And within those echo chambers, what usually happens, or what might happen, is that those who engage in conspiracy theorizing um, insulate those beliefs. What they do is that any counter evidence is used to reinforce the conspiracy theory. So, for example, if somebody is talking about how the Democrats, how Hillary Clinton are trafficking children into pizza parlors in Washington D.C., and you say to them, "Well, it was shown that this people went there, they couldn't find anything. How can you think this?" And a typical response might be something like, "Well, of course they wouldn't find anything. It's been hidden." Or they set this was staged. This is all part of a conspiracy. They want you to make they want to make us think as though nothing's going on. They're in on it. So any kind of information that is given to try to disprove the conspiracy or cast doubt on it is then is fed back into the conspiracy to feed it and to sustain it. These are cases of what's been called evidential self-insulation. So it's kind of a self-insulated belief. And in those cases, the conspiracy theorist comes out as somebody who kind of exhibits a kind of irrationality. They're not really responsive to the truth, whereas somebody who is actually genuinely trying to uncover evidence, like an Erin Brockovich, like those who worked the Watergate scandal, they were generally concerned with the truth, and had the truth pointed elsewhere, they would have followed it. Whereas a conspiracy theorist is less willing to go down the route of the truth. That's not to say that they never do. So an interesting example that I only found out about recently is it concerns flat earthers. So the flat earth conspiracy theory is another kind of very popular conspiracy theory that kind of, the name speaks for itself. And a group of flat earth theorists organized a trip to Antarctica to try to show that that the world was flat, the Earth was flat, and in the process of doing the experiments, they would it came to light that actually the light would curve in such a way that would kind of show that it wouldn't happen if the Earth were flat. The way the light shone, it wouldn't have happened, and lots of key figures in that movement, or at least a handful, actually were receptive to that evidence and abandoned, or at least became slightly unhappier about holding on to the belief that the Earth was flat. So there are some cases where conspiracy theories they are kind of confronted with evidence that's just insurmountably against them. But other cases that distinguish the conspiracy theorists from those who are kind of trying to uncover conspiracies is that they will try to weaponize the truth in favor of their theory and insulate the theory.
No, that's a really good example. So what are you currently working on right now?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things on the go currently.